It's Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe. It's week 3. It's day 2. I'm Matt Sauerville. He's Derek Brown. Some pretty good matches here today, Derek. How you doing?
I'm doing very well indeed. You're right. It's been a very different week to what we saw last week. Obviously, the dominance of Mage last week has very much fallen by the wayside, but there's been no shortage of super exciting games with a lot of players mixing it up with the rogues and hunters we're seeing this week.
Yeah, you know, this is actually something that just occurred to me, was that a specialist is about playing the one deck, and we've seen players just swapping around on decks. Just, like, weirdly so. In fact, that's actually one of the things that we're going to talk about today as we go over what Grandmasters is, if you're just joining us for the first time. It's 48 of the best from around the world who are competing in Grandmasters. Americas, Europe, which is the region we're in right now, and Asia Pacific. And over the course of 8 weeks, they're going to play in a double round-robin stage, split into divisions as they move towards the playoffs and try to see themselves at the top of the group. Take home that big win. And we're not using last year's standing, we're not using Conquest, we are using Specialist, as I said earlier, which is a single deck format.
We are indeed, and we are seeing more and more of what makes this such a unique and I think very interesting format indeed, given that you can only bring one class each week. One class, but 3 decks of that class. A primary deck, which you must queue up first, and then you can switch to your primary or tertiary deck after game 1, which have up to 5 cards different from your primary deck in order to counteract whatever strategies your opponent may be bringing. For example, put in a bunch of greedy cards if you're facing warrior, put in a bunch of healing and taunt cards if you're facing rogue. Pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing kind of some stuff work around too, where sometimes going greedy hasn't actually paid off.
That's true.
We've been seeing stuff where playing big defensive cards hasn't actually paid off. We've been seeing players use their secondary deck and then go, you know what, this wasn't as good as I thought it was. I'm just going to go back to the primary, or even go to the third deck at that point, as we saw Tice did yesterday. You know, twice he has played a deck that was not his initial thought in his matches in the third game.
And I think that's something that has been the biggest area of improvement here in Grandmasters, is the secondary and tertiary decks, specifically teching for the right matchup. Because if you're playing on ladder, you just need to come up with the best overall deck, which is very easy for these players. They've been doing it for many, many years, optimizing these deck lists. But people are realizing more and more that, for example, against Warrior, Bomb Warrior, maybe you want quicker cards rather than more greedy value cards, because they play so much damage in the form of all those bombs. And I think we are nowhere close to the final evolution of these tech decisions.
And I definitely think some of the players have been doing it a little bit better than others, as we can take a look at the standings and see how things are shaping out. You know, we're still pretty early on. We're about a third of the way done with matches for some of the players. And, you know, it's just the talk for us has been Fino so far, you know, sitting at 5-0. But I look at the right side of this bracket, and it's just, my goodness, Division B looks tough. I mean, with Psycho sitting at 4-0, you know, Swidz at 0-4. Like, it's so weird to me to look at this and to think that any of these players can go 0-4. You know, I think Swidz has been faced with a lot of, you know, poor luck.
Yeah.
But this week he's also changed up his decision for deck list a lot, and I'm curious to see how this is going to pay off.
It really does just speak to how stacked Grandmasters is, the absolute pinnacle of competitive Hearthstone for this year. Because like you said, even though we are pretty close to the start, only in week 3, it's already getting to the point where for Psycho, it's going to be difficult for him to not qualify through to the playoffs if he's been playing anything like how he has been so far. And for Swidz, he's really going to have to start turning something around, whatever it may be. His play, his deck decisions, he has to start winning in order to stand a chance.
We're going to see Swidz and Psycho compete later on today. We're kicking things off with Bozzzton versus Bunnyhoppor, where yesterday Bozzzton, you know, he's had a pretty big change of heart with decks as well, where he's gone over to Rogue at this point, and his version of Rogue is featuring a single copy of Waggle Pick, a single copy of Life Drinker. And as this week has been underway, and I've been hearing a lot of talk about Rogue stepping back into the limelight, I've heard that those 2 cards might actually be core cards to the deck, and, you know, be 2-ofs. With all respect.
Well, very possibly. We've seen a lot of talk about not only just one Waggle Pick, but going all out with the old school raiding party package, which both Ball Control and Muzzy have played. And I believe both got a victory on day 1 with both of their decks respectively, because Muzzy was coming to the conclusion that against Bomb Warrior, the more stripped down aggressive version seems to be doing better for him than the slower, more value-oriented version with Hench Clan Burglars thrown in there as well, which is a really interesting conclusion, especially given that I think the raiding party version can do better in the mirror as well, what with it being more aggressive. So I think from Muzzy and Ball Control, that style of Rogue is looking very strong indeed.
Muzzy's definitely one of the players I look for to always get more aggressive when it's possible.
Although
he does love to play himself some control. It's just, you know, I feel like those maybe were the conquest days of yore. We're going to highlight Swidz's deck in particular this today, and this week because, first, this is a major departure from what Swidz has historically played in his competitive career. And then secondly, I think that this look of Rogue is more where I want to be with Rogue. I want to have Myras, I want to have preparation, and I want to have life drinkers and waggle picks. I'm curious about the Tog Waggle and the Myras versus raiding party and stuff like that. I don't think I'm cutting Myras from an aggressive version anytime soon. But to me, this deck feels like the place to be right now if I'm in Swidz's position because everyone expects me to bring control.
Exactly, and I think that's really what Swidz has to change and is why I really like the fact that he's bringing Rogue. But even though, as you said, looks like a pretty strong list, I fully agree, a lot of good stuff going on here. This is not the kind of Swidz deck that Swidz has played pretty much ever over the course of his Hearthstone history. He is known primarily as a control warrior player, and secondarily, I would say after that, as just a control player in general. This is not his preferred style of play. But Specialist is about testing that. It's about not becoming predictable. And because you are only allowed to bring one class each week here in Grandmasters, you have to be able to adapt to any situation and learn these matchups very quickly.
I'm really excited to see Swidz play later on because I'm a big fan of Swidz. I've picked him in a lot of different playoff stages as my pick to win the whole thing, and I'm just hoping that he can turn this around because I think that his record right now is not reflective of how well Swidz actually plays. And so I'm hoping to see something a little different here, even if it's got to be taking down Casey. But
no small feat.
Every single one of these players you're going to have that same thought about. So we got to go to a quick break as we're going to get our first match set up and underway. Bozzzton versus Bunnyhoppor is kicking things off today. 5 matches in our second day. We'll have 6 more tomorrow. A quick break and then first match underway. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome to Hearthstone Masters. Today, we're going to share one of the biggest changes coming to Hearthstone in 2019, an entirely new competitive format called Specialist. Specialist will be the default competitive format for Hearthstone Masters. From online Masters qualifiers to live Masters Tour events to the pinnacle of competition, Hearthstone Grandmasters. Ready to learn how the new Specialist format works? Let's dive right in. In this new competitive format, players select 3 30-card decks to bring to a Specialist tournament. The catch? All decks must be from the same class. In this regard, Specialist is a major departure from most other competitive formats. Amongst every player's 3 Specialist decks, one is designated as the primary deck. The player's other 2 decks are designated as secondary and tertiary decks. There are no special limitations placed on a player's primary deck aside from regular Hearthstone deck construction rules. However, a player's secondary and tertiary decks must share at least 25 cards in common with their primary deck. In other words, secondary and tertiary decks must mirror the primary deck with up to 5 cards swapped out. It is important to point out that duplicate cards count when comparing to a primary deck. For example, if you want to include 2 copies of Twilight Drake in your secondary deck, and there are no copies of Twilight Drake in your primary deck, then you must spend 2 swaps to include both cards. Unique or not, if a card isn't in your primary deck, it counts towards the 5-card difference limit. A player's primary deck is important for another reason. Whenever a new match starts, both its players must begin by piloting their primary deck. Only after the first game concludes can you choose to swap into your secondary or tertiary deck. You do not announce which of your decks you will be using in the next game, and you do not have to swap. After every game, this process repeats, allowing players to swap or stay until the match concludes. Importantly, you can swap to any of your decks between games, primary, secondary, or tertiary, including returning to your primary deck if you have previously swapped out of it. And those are all the rules for Specialist, Hearthstone's new official competitive format. So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start brewing your own primary, secondary, and tertiary decks to get a jump start on the new format and innovate like the pros.
Let the battle begin!
Bozzzton versus Bunnyhoppor is coming up, and a big match here for Bozzzton as his record does not sit pretty. For Bunnyhoppor, it's kind of a continuation of what's been so far. He kind of has like a steady record throughout, but Hunter has really seemed like it's his thing. You take a look at his result yesterday versus Viper, which granted Viper didn't have the best of draws, but look into last week where Bunnyhoppor had a pretty strong performance with that one, and just overall the resurgence of Hunter into the metagame, I feel like is in part because of Viper and Bunnyhoppor in particular, where Viper was basically one of the reasons I think that they brought this list to the World Championship, and one of the reasons it's refined as well as it is right now.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the decks that the stats-focused players are very much in favor of, because their statistics are saying it's only really weak to Rogue, and it's very, very good against the Mage decks as well. I think the reason it's not more popular in Grandmasters is because a lot of players don't feel comfortable playing it yet, because it can be very difficult to know what you're looking for in certain matchups. Bunnyhoppor, however, is absolutely not one of those players. He feels incredibly comfortable with this deck, having hit rank 1 legend, was it on 2 servers last season? Or at the very least hitting like rank 3 and 5 on 2 separate servers at the same time.
He was 3 and 5 simultaneously.
Right, exactly. Way up there at the top with this deck. He's very, very proficient with it indeed. And up against Bozzzton's Rogue, this could be the point where he's struggling, I think. As we can see here, this is a somewhat standard build of Rogue, a few more single cards than we'd see in some of the other lists, but a lot of stuff that could help in the matchup. A little bit of heal from Life Drinker, as well as a sap to deal with anything that gets out of control, like a big hyena could be very useful.
I would say, to me, one of the big concerns I have for Bunnyhoppor is twofold. Number one, the fact that preparation is in this deck list. Preparation's not in every single Rogue right now, and I think that prep plus a tempo removal card can be very important versus an Animal Companion turn trying to fight back. Number two is, I said this yesterday when we were practicing, or 2 days ago when we were practicing, kind of learning the decks and figuring out the matchups. I think Henge Clan Thug is in a really good spot right now. I think if that card goes unchecked for like a single turn, it often is enough to snowball a game. And Hunter right now is not really focused on taking the board early and then punishing. It's a lot about answering and then having a swing turn at some point. Right. And so Bunnyhoppor's answer to that are literally limited to an Animal Companion rolling a big outcome, to having a marked shot, or to having a deadly shot. That's not a very strong way to handle Henge Clan Thug, in my opinion.
I don't know if I actually agree with you. I think he has quite a lot of ways to answer the Henge Clan Thug. I think the benefit of the Thug is that it demands an answer and therefore slows down Bunnyhoppor's own development. But with 2 marked shots that can take it out, Springpaw nonsense with Timberwolf, Hatchet that can go in combination with whatever small beasts you have in play, I think he's not so much afraid of that. It's more just the constant little chip damage that eventually leads to a huge burst combo for Bozzzton that I think Bunnyhoppor should really be afraid of.
Looking dapper today.
He's looking very good.
Mentioned yesterday in his interview that he was heading to a wedding this weekend.
Not his own, I assume. I think...
Correct. Well, I assume so anyway.
His bride would be not too happy if this was his wedding day. And he sorry,
I'll
be right with you.
Let me finish this Hearthstone game real quick. I also feel like he would have mentioned that.
You'd hope so. As Bunnyhoppor is already presented on turn 1 with a pretty interesting choice. The obvious first instinct is to pick the Zul'jin. Does he ever take the Timberwolf for the synergy with Springpaw and Unleash the Hounds in his hand?
I'm actually thinking Timberwolf might be the pick here. There's a couple concerns that Bunnyhoppor's thinking of, which I think number one is going to be board presence getting too wide.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways he actually can take advantage of the matchup is with counterattacking. And Timberwolf is one of your major tools that enables counterattacks, as well at the same time enables a defensive measure. I think it is astoundingly the pick of those 3 cards.
I fully agree. I think the way he's losing this game is not necessarily late game value. It's just dying in the mid game.
So secondarily to that, the kill command I think is also a major consideration over the Zul'jin for being able to answer things like Henge Clan Thug. I mean, his hand right now was pretty darn weak to a big early start with a Henge Clan Thug.
That's true.
So I think the Timberwolf is like, well, I can answer it. It's going to be costly, but I definitely need Timberwolf in my deck. Yeah. And then the second one is, well, I have more removal spells. Those are easier for me to get than it is for me to, take this kill command and then try to leverage a removal spell to be enough time.
As Bunnyhoppor here very much trying to flood the board quote unquote, I suppose, on the turn where there's the dagger in place, so both can't be removed off. You can see it from a slight eyebrow raise there. This was the punish in backstab and evil miscreant on this turn. A complete board clear, no coin dire frenzy target, which is absolutely what he was trying to set up on.
Absolutely. And the thing about it too is that for Bunnyhoppor, I think that play on his turn signifies how tough the matchup actually is.
Good point.
Where rather than Bunnyhoppor taking time to set up a big turn and have a big outcome, instead he goes, wow, you know what, I probably need to land a dire frenzy and fight pretty proactively. And takes, you know, it's pretty much you broke the rule against Rogue, which is don't let them play an evil miscreant on turn 3 if they don't have a coin. Bozzzton would have had to have preparation in order to activate that evil miscreant that turn. And Bunnyhoppor said, that's worth the risk. It's a bad matchup anyway. I have to have something go right.
The payoff was pretty huge if it did work, though. Having a 1-mana 4/4 rush that he could immediately draw from his deck with the Master's Call, I think was definitely worth the risk. And, I mean, even though it didn't work out, Bunnyhoppor is far from out of this game. He can make himself a big Hyena turn with the Timberwolves and the Spring Paws as well. He's got Vicious Scalehide plus Dire Frenzy as well, should he need to get some healing in.
And yesterday, when faced with this position, Bozzzton was facing down pressure and chose to go with Spirit of the Shark.
Right.
I think Spirit of the Shark is a lot better when you're not facing pressure. But the question here is, how much pressure does he need to apply now that he's leveraged a lead? Yeah. And honestly, this is my problem with Spirit of the Shark. But I'm not going to go too much into it. Long story short, I think it needs to be there because you need the effect of something colossal can happen. But I think Spirit of the Shark is meant to be there when you need something colossal to happen.
Yes.
I think yesterday when Bozzzton played this as a defensive measure, in that particular game it definitely cost him. He got unlucky with lackeys, but you know, I'm looking at this spot right now, and I'm looking at Bunnyhoppor's hand, and I'm looking at the board from Bozzzton.
There's a
Boston's hand. How on earth is Bozzzton going to lose this game?
Well, there's a lot going on both sides. Well, first of all, I want to say I really like not going for the Spirit of the Shark there. I think it's a very mature rogue play because that's the flashy play that gets you a whole bunch of lackeys and battle cries next turn. I think that generally with rogue, you just want to play more aggressively, go more for tempo and damage. So I think this is definitely the way to go. For Bunnyhoppor, though, you say, how does Bozzzton lose? Look at this hand, man. He's got so many answers. And he can put some really big threats on the board as well. How he sequences it, though, is the difficult part.
That's the thing. I don't know if he's got the time for this. And this is largely because Bozzzton has just played for board presence. He hasn't gone for the flashy play, as you mentioned. And Bunnyhoppor, he's having to respond. Yep. This is not a very strong Unleash turn at all.
It's fine, because this is just like clearing out the cards in his hand. This is what Beast Hunter does, is it makes these big swing turns. And he's keeping the core combo cards in his hand of Scavenging Hyena, Timberwolf, and Unleash the Hounds to go for that big combo on turn 5 or 6.
And Hunter's Hatchet is active.
That's true.
There's a Blink Fox.
Oh, the combo of Blink Fox into Hatchet.
I don't have the echo in my voice, so... Oh, there it was.
So now with options a lot more limited in terms of the amount of stats that Bozzzton could put on board, now I'm definitely looking more at Spirit of the Shark. There's not much else he can do to proactively develop onto the board.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really easy take-it-slow turn. Chip away at board.
Clear off all the minions for Dire Frenzy and Hyena.
Weird-looking backstab, but this backstab effectively pushes 3 damage. And if I can turn a backstab into 3 damage and do the thing I want to do, which is kill my opponent's minion, that sounds great.
Strictly better Sinister Strike.
Kills the minion and it deals 3.
Exactly.
0 mana Cobra Shot.
Oh, dude. Forgot about Cobra Shot. What a card.
Oh, did you? You forgot about the card no one ever played with it.
And here we see the combo that Bunnyhoppor has pretty actively made more likely to happen in his deck. A lot of the Hunter players have cut one Vicious Scalehide in order of a slightly more greedy package overall. I personally really like the double Scalehide builds. I think it's very strong against Rogue. I think it's very strong against Warrior. I think it could even be pretty good in the mirror.
Oh, Evil Cable Rat's a beast too.
Beast Rogue is the future, man.
You just gotta put some Headhunters hatchets in there.
Bozzzton getting a little bit more fortunate with the lackeys this time around.
Oh, it also has the lead too. I mean, when you have the lead, I feel like lackeys are just always good.
That's true. Yeah, Faceless Lackey would actually have just been perfectly good for him. But man, oh man, is he getting a lot of value. Bunnyhoppor is going to have to do some kind of a crazy swing turn or an OTK or whatever to pull this one back, because there is no way he's winning on value, especially given that he's burned Zul'jin. He has no ultimate endgame anymore.
Yeah, for me, the ultimate, and you know, I asked how Bozzzton was going to lose this game. The answer was Vicious Scale High Dire Frenzy, and then the repetitious drawing of those cards. That can keep Bunnyhoppor afloat, I think, for long enough to maybe be able to secure some board presence.
I think it's one of the best things he could do. I'm not so certain that it's enough to keep him in the game. The Wildbrood Skitter is interesting. It could just be used to fend off a big Scavenging Hyena, or at the very least forced Bunnyhoppor to trade into it. As here we go. We are seeing that big turn that we've been talking about here for Bunny.
Timberwolf, pretty important here as well.
Super important.
Just being able to make sure to eliminate stuff.
And I think we're seeing a good demonstration of why this is a pretty miserable matchup for the Hunter, even after this huge swing turn comes in for Bunny. It's just going to be a fairly easy sack to clear up everything else.
There's just so much in Bozzzton's hand.
Yeah.
It's like, this to me is a demonstration of why Spirit of the Shark is powerful. If you have a slight lead, it turns into a massive lead.
I would also argue if you're behind, it can definitely pull you back.
It can.
But yes, I agree. It turns good situations into great situations the majority of the time. Especially against Mage, where they just have no way to kill it in the whole deck. You know, it just sticks around for the whole game.
It's funny how Hearthstone, to me, breaks a lot of rules of just card game theory in general in the past, where, like, Spirit of the Shark is, by the old standard definition, a win more card.
Yes.
What I mean by that is, oftentimes when you're winning a game and a card has a massive effect because you're winning, it's unnecessary.
Right.
You don't need that to win. Your deck doesn't need to do everything. It needs to do enough. In Hearthstone, that's, for whatever reason, that rule just does not seem to apply. And it's like, if you're winning the game, you better have powerful stuff that ends the game.
Yeah.
Or crazy stuff happens and it gets turned back around. Spirit of the Shark is just, even though it's a win more quotey fingers card, it just gets the job done.
That's true, yeah. I mean, I'd say that still definitely applies somewhat in Hearthstone. For example, why Bloodlust is generally considered a much better card than the Stormbringer, for example, because it wins you the game rather than pushing some silly fancy advantage that you don't really need the majority of the time. But it's an interesting point you raised. And I trust you, given that your overall game theory is far superior to mine.
Well, I don't know about that. We'll just say I have read about it.
And I have not.
Mostly on Wikipedia. Fun fact, there is no school in the United States that offers a degree in game theory. You can only specialize in it. Or have a focus in.
I did not know that.
I've actually yet to see a school in the world that offers game theory as a main course. It's always like a data
Well, it's
thing.
like an aspect of a maths degree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just thought it was interesting.
That is interesting. What else is interesting is the fact that Bunnyhoppor is still kind of just dying.
He's getting decimated.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't look like there's much happening from Bozzzton's side, but it's the threat of the power in Bozzzton's hand. Like, Bunnyhoppor does not have a way to secure a position.
These lackeys are crazy strong as well. Like, this is just damage. Like, everything in Bozzzton's hand, apart from the Ethereal Lackey, can just go face.
Yeah, just having to risk the other one.
And yeah, like it's in situations like this that when players are nigh on out of the game, that you kind of try and look back at decisions that could have pulled it back in. Like I was gonna say about picking the Zul'jin, I still am pretty convinced he made the right choice.
Oh, I'm very convinced he made the right choice.
In the Timberwolf. Like I don't want to say if he'd picked that, he could have a late game win condition by just playing it down, because I don't think he would have got here.
No.
I think he'd already be dead if he hadn't picked the Timberwolf.
I don't think he would have been dead, but I certainly don't think you'd be looking at this and going, "Wow, you just wait till I get to 10 mana." Like, that's just you'll get 10 mana. It's whether or not that's even relevant at the end, because Bunnyhoppor would have still had to load it up. He would still have to be able to defend himself properly through it. So, I'm looking at a pair of deadly shots, one of these randomly generated, of course.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the Dire Frenzy. I'm thinking about Master's Call.
I wonder.
Zul'jin might have given him a better chance overall in this iteration. But I think if you look at the game in totality, without Timberwolf, Bunnyhoppor is just not going to respond well to a lot of situations he's going to get in.
Hope you like my invention.
And we've seen some players, I think Hoy, who hit Legend last night after like 6 hours after the ladder reset on Europe with a build of Beast Hunter that cut Zul'jin. It's a much more low mana cost curve build with the Hench Clan Hogsteed and 2 Savannah High mains.
It's a very Hoy-like thing to do.
A very Hoy list, yeah. A player who almost qualified through to Grandmasters, and I believe will be the Masters Tour in Las Vegas. If I'm not mistaken.
Spring champion from 2016.
That's right.
And has certainly been one of the fantastic performers that when he, decides to step in and compete.
Yes.
He really likes to compete at a variety of things, and also just to really push himself at whatever he's doing. So kind of steps in and out of the scene. But when he's there, whoo,
Yeah.
look out.
He also beat Sottle on the climb to Legend, so I'm an even bigger fan of his for that.
Well, I think we might be in Tundra Rhino territory.
So the Tundra.
Well, it's from a tundra, but
Yeah.
Wherever his territory, or maybe migrated and.
Well, it seems a bit confusing if his name is literally Tundra Rhino. You'd think he'd stick around, right?
Sure, but I mean, look where we are now. This little village with like the garden in the bottom right that you can squash the plants on.
I mean, it's true as well. Your name is Texas Nathan, and you roam where you please.
Texas Nathan, they've been calling me that for years.
Oh, Texas Nathan. Okay, so I guess in this position... Wait, is Bunnyhoppor dead?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm counting
10.
I'm counting a possible for more, which is not happening this turn.
Still not lethal. Okay, so if Bunnyhoppor can top deck Master's Call and draw the buffed up Vicious Scalehide and something else to help him clear the board,
there's a chance.
there's a chance. It's actually not that over. I mean, it's still looking absolutely miserable. But Bozzzton has pretty much run out of value at this point. Kind of.
I mean, Bunnyhoppor has to draw Vicious Scalehide nonsense this turn.
Yes. I don't even think Vicious Scalehide on its own would be enough. It has to be Vicious Scalehide.
He does have another Dire Frenzy with it, though. That's a 7-point Hell Swing.
Oh, okay.
Whoa!
Okay.
No way! That is huge!
So we can go Vicious Scalehide, Dire Frenzy.
Look at
Victor
Boston's
Deadly
reaction!
Shot. He's been out of this game for so long.
I mean, this is a disaster. He can't kill the Vicious Scalehide without using his entire hand.
What?
This is not supposed to happen.
That's a full board clip. Bunnyhoppor's ahead on board. He's going to heal for a huge amount of damage.
Backsteps, Bozzzton has to kill this. He has to sink both
He has no
lackeys,
choice.
SI7 agent, tank 7 and heal Bunnyhoppor to 18. By the way, there's 5, 4, 6 lifesteal Vicious Scalehides still in the deck for Bunnyhoppor.
Was that a mistake then for Bozzzton to even play the SI7 agent last turn? Because it means that...
No, I don't think so.
Because he didn't... Yeah, because that would be playing around exactly Vicious Scalehide off the top and Dire Frenzy to buff it up again.
What happened?
Bozzzton just ran out of stuff.
Yeah, that facial reaction is definitely appropriate. This does not feel good.
This feels terrible. I mean,
Now-
Bunnyhoppor still has to get some good draws to win this game. But look, he's arguably ahead at this point.
I think he might be ahead. He's definitely ahead.
He's actually just winning.
What on earth?
You never count Bunnyhoppor out. How have we not learned our lesson?
I mean, look at what Boston's hand was at the time. He actually just ran out of stuff.
Should he have played even greedier? Was there any way for him to...
I don't think it was about the way that he was actually using his cards, what I think is that he just has not drawn... I don't know. I actually don't know.
Because he had so much value in his hand and so much damage as well. Maybe he should have, I don't know, just launched more damage to the face quicker. He was maybe playing around the second Unleash the Hounds, like all his lackeys.
My goodness. Bunnyhoppor's first Tundra Rhino attack goes face. The second attack goes face. And so Bozzzton has to close the game in 3 turns, or he has to draw away.
That is a draw.
Himself.
Holy Water gets him a Tundra Rhino where he can get a Scale Hide.
You could also Holy Water your own minions, technically.
You could Holy Water the Burglar for a reroll.
It's costly. I imagine
he's not going to go for that.
I think the Vicious Scale Hide is probably the one you want to take here. Like, A, you want to kill that minion first.
Holy Water, yep, that means it doesn't heal. And then, I mean, the healing doesn't even matter that much at this point. He's nowhere near lethal. He just needs to defend himself. It obviously only gives him a 1/3 regular Scale Hide as opposed to buffed up one. Then he's got to trade.
I don't think you can use your face.
Yeah, I don't think you can either.
Okay, regular Scale Hide. But here's the deal. Bunnyhoppor gets to chop down the 3/1 to, you know, cut the clock from Bozzzton.
Yeah, if you trade it in, there's nothing for Bozzzton to attack the Scale Hide into for lifesteal.
2 turns for Bozzzton now. Oh,
okay.
Discover a spell. Ooh, Vicious Scale Hide and the Goblin Lackey. That can give you, that can offset the hero power.
Okay, that gets you 1 extra turn potentially.
No. That gets you a lot of extra turns potentially because you're offsetting the hero power.
Right. Because if it attacks multiple turns, I mean,
yeah, that's a big deal, I think.
And you play it now so that even if Bunnyhoppor doesn't play a minion, you can still attack face with it next turn. I like that a lot.
Is there a breakpoint on buffing the 4/3 instead? So that would be 10 damage represented over 2 turns from that.
I'm pretty sure you save it for the Scale Hide, right? Because it surprises Bunnyhoppor. Maybe it just gets you an extra turn.
I'm trying to think of draws that would matter in this regard. In terms of damage breakpoint, I actually don't think he has a single card that produces a lethal outcome by buffing the Hench Clan Burglar.
Yeah.
This is a game of the smallest edges. I do agree you should be playing the Lackey right now.
Okay, but as long as it's going on the Scale Hide, I'm happy.
Oh! Wow! However, there's still the extra turn now because of that Vicious Scale Hide.
Yeah. It's still not over.
Shadow Step.
Oh, Shadow Step's a good draw, but if he steps the Burglar, he can't trade in and kill off the 5/3. So he would have to pray he gets something good off the Burglar if he wanted to do that, or he can obviously Shadow Step the Cable Rat instead. But I would say discovering a spell is much better than a Lackey in this instance when you have 10 mana.
A random card from another class. More than a Lackey, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, discovering a random class. A random spell, sorry.
He's taking the risk. He says it's got to be big.
Got to go for it.
Mark of the Loa. So does Mark of the Loa defend you properly? So if you attach that to the Burglar, what happens is both of the Wyverns have to trade into that.
That's correct.
However,
that's not getting immediate damage to face.
Right. It's also keeping you at the mark where you're still dead in 2 turns.
Yes.
So I don't know what Bozzzton has to draw. Thinking Life Drinker's an awfully good one, depending on how the turn pans out.
He's going for it, praying that this small amount of damage he can get there. Maybe if he can top deck Novice Engineer, or I don't even know what can get him there at this point.
Extra health.
Pretty much.
I mean, I'm seriously looking at the deck list right now, and it looks like Life Drinker is what's needed.
Pretty much. No Ziliax. Life Drinker is the only heal card in his deck. Leroy would be 1 damage off lethal.
So that's another question I have. Did Bozzzton miss a single point of damage somewhere this game?
It's very often the case in Hearthstone that you miss 1 damage.
And Eviscerate's not enough. Wow.
Oh my god.
Bozzzton just gets chipped away. How did this game get away from him? I actually don't know.
I am in shock. Bunnyhoppor on this Hunter is absolutely unbelievable. He wins games that just no one has any right to. That game, like the board position that Bozzzton had on turn 6, he had more cards, more health, more board control, more value. Zul'jin was gone, so the late game was looking very weak for Bunnyhoppor as well, but he managed to find the exact scenario he needed to with healing up turn after turn to win that game.
I feel like he should have won that game.
I agree. And that's what I'm going to have to look back on, right? Because to be honest,
I don't even know if he did anything wrong.
Right. Well, I wasn't even, to be honest, paying close enough attention at that point because it just looked so over. Bunnyhoppor, man.
Bunnyhoppor, man. Seriously, that's a pretty darn right. Took a Timberwolf over a Zul'jin off of tracking, and I don't blame him. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to find out if Bunnyhoppor can continue his dominance with Hunter. But for Bozzzton, something's got to give. 1-4 record and not looking for a 1-5. Stay tuned.
One night, I was called on to scry. But what is this symbol I spy? It's my own crystal ball. Yes, I'll answer the call. And the others will come by and by. That's right. We be calling a team in. The masters of plotting and scheming. By this candle a-glowing, I surely be knowing whose gold will be once more a-gleaming.
My name is Elias Sibelius and I go under Bozzzton. My username actually comes from my cat. His name is Bozzzton, so I just took that and made it a bit cooler with the triple Z. So yeah, shout out to him. When I got the confirmation that I was in Grandmaster, I was overwhelmed by emotions. Even though I haven't had the first place big tournament win, they actually appreciate that consistency and what I've been working for the last couple of years. I'm very good at focusing on a specific thing and keeping myself ready for the situation. Yeah, and mind games and stuff like that. My favorite memory is still my first DreamHack. I remember facing Super JJ. I was a total newcomer, so it was very big for me to just be there and just realizing that I could actually beat all these players, and it was very cool. My personal goals for this year is I want to qualify for the playoff. Of course, I want to go to the global finals. That's, I think, everyone's goal, but I want to be one of the best players. I will try my best to get there, for sure.
Bozzzton versus Bunnyhoppor is about to get underway for game number 2 here at the Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe. And Darok, I seriously do not know what happened in game number 1. Bozzzton, somehow that game got away from him. I don't even know if he really did anything really wrong. He just had a lot of stuff, and Bunnyhoppor kept fighting, and then you look up, and I was like, wait a minute, Bozzzton's out of stuff.
Well, that's just kind of, I think, what happens a lot when players playing against Bunnyhoppor is it doesn't really feel like they do anything wrong. It's just Bunnyhoppor gives them absolutely zero maneuverability. He will not make these kind of mistakes that allow you to pull back into the game. If he has a possibility to win, he will pretty much always find a way to take it.
I will say that in my times having trouble against Rogue, trouble against Hunter as Rogue,
right,
have been Vicious Scalehide and Dire Frenzy turns. Like that,
yeah.
To me, is the window of opening where I go, okay, something can go wrong this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think all the usual stuff that you're looking for in other matchups, like the Hyena or even the High Main in certain matchups that you can tech in, they're just too easily dealt with the likes of Backstab, Eviscerate, Sap, and all that goodness that Rogue can tempo out in the early game. So I think just trying to take it a little bit longer game is generally a very good way to go.
Which is exactly what Bunnyhoppor's looking at for this one. He has gone to his tertiary deck, which removes 2 Scavenging Hyenas, a copy of Tracking, and a Tundra Rhino. He adds in 2 Life Drinkers and 2 Rat Traps. So think about the Vicious Scalehide and how important the lifesteal was. Life Drinker, very similar function.
Even more healing. Rat Trap is a very interesting inclusion in Hunter. I think the main place that I saw this being popularized was when Glass was streaming. He'd been playing a lot of Hunter recently, and he put in the 2 of Rat Trap because it's obviously very good against Rogue, which needs to combo out lots of cards in a single turn. But it's also surprisingly good against Warrior a lot of the time when they need to put all their removal cards together in the late stages of the game, or play multiple warpaths in a turn.
Notice the difference in going
first. It's a good card to include, I think.
Difference in going first and second, where Bunnyhoppor just tempos out the 1-drop too.
100%. Yeah, you see this in a lot of matchups, like the Rogue Mirror, at least before Raiding Party was nerfed, where if you were going first, you played Deckhand. If you're going second, you didn't. In this instance, if you're going first, you play the 1/1 because it can start attacking. If you're not, you don't, because it gets killed instantly. Because for Bunnyhoppor, when your opponent's on the coin as well, it's not even like it's guaranteed to get hit by a dagger on turn 2. They want to go coin Miscreant. That's way more powerful for Bozzzton.
No coin Miscreant. Bozzzton, of course, knows this is Rat Trap.
100%.
This is an open deckless format. You don't know what deck your opponent has gone with. They don't have to announce that.
Yeah.
But once he sees the secret, that is the only secret available is in the tertiary deck for Bunnyhoppor. So a little bit of information there. I think Bunnyhoppor can assume that Bozzzton is on primary, as the secondary and tertiary decks do not provide a useful function versus Hunter.
Yeah, a very safe assumption, with the tertiary deck having 2 former champs in it as, I guess, an anti-warrior tech.
A Pavel and a Firebat. No!
It's always Boomzooka, dude. I swear. That card has like a 90% probability to be generated.
At least make it 7 mana already.
That's true, actually. They're not buffing Boomzooka.
One day it's going to be good. I'm telling you. I don't know when, I don't know how. But one day you're going to look up and you're going to be like, I hate Boomzooka decks. Well, there's no interaction.
Do you remember in the reveal stream for all the cards? I think it was Chucky playing on the account where he had this like Death Rattle Hunter deck, whatever, and he played Boomzooka, and it was insane. It summoned like the mechanical whelps and all that nonsense as well.
Hang on a second. Bunnyhoppor just took Bestial Wrath over another Marked Shot. I am actually stunned.
That seemed like, I mean, I would have picked Marked Shot, right? You would have as well.
I would have snap taken Marked Shot. That was not, in my head, that was not even an option to take the Bestial Wrath. So I've taken it before, but not over a Marked Shot.
Right. I mean, I can think as to what his reasoning would be, being he can spend all his mana for the next few turns very easily because he's got double Master's Call, and therefore he wants cheaper, quicker cards. Like Bestial Wrath, he can just throw that down on a Springpaw or a dog off of Unleash the Hounds and just get a very favorable value trade.
Very weird.
Very weird. But again, this is just classic Bunnyhoppor. He doesn't take anything at face value.
Perhaps thinking specifically about Scalehide interactions?
That's definitely one of the major benefits of Bestial Wrath, and also the Beast Within. We see that being picked a fair amount off of Marked Shots.
I just feel like I look at last game and how Bunnyhoppor won is by a very slim margin.
Very slim.
I'm taking the Marked Shot. All right, let's see how this... I want to see how this Bestial Wrath is used. I actually am less concerned about whether or not the outcome of the game is a particular way. I just want to see if he actually gets use out of the Bestial Wrath.
Me too. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that one.
That's all I'm going to keep my eye on. So it's all you from here, Derek.
I wonder.
All right, well, I guess what the kind of the elephant in the room at the moment is the fact that Bunnyhoppor has played the Rat Trap and it has done pretty much nothing so far. But this is where the interesting interaction with Rat Trap comes into play, is that a lot of the time it does not activate, but it's still very powerful.
Its effect is that unless you want me to have a 6/6, you better only play 2 cards.
Exactly, it limits your opponent to 2 cards a turn, pretty much, because a 6/6 on board is just absolutely devastating in this kind of paired board state, equal board state situation.
You got to think about the situations that matter for Bozzzton. When a 6/6 appears, it's when you can tempo kill it efficiently,
Or you have
think
lethal.
Sap, yeah, or you're setting up or having lethal, yeah.
As this is,
I said sap, not zap, by the way. Bootleg backstab.
it's good stuff, dude. When Thunderhead is a 3/6, Zap is going to be the meta. Swear down, 100%.
Derek and I, of course, talking about the buffs that were announced. A pretty much unprecedented thing in Hearthstone. If you haven't checked it out, just Google it. Hearthstone buffs coming up, patch 2019.
It's called Rise of the Mechs.
Rise of the Mechs, there we go.
The official patch name.
I couldn't remember the name of it, but I was like, I'll give you a list of words so you can Google it and probably find your way there.
Yeah, that's right. A free golden legendary, I believe, is being awarded to anyone who logs in during that event period.
Do you ever have friends that just are terrible at Googling stuff?
Not specifically, I don't think.
I've watched people Google stuff when I'm like, just search up these 2 words and then the name of the thing.
Oh, right.
And they're like typing it in and they're like, they get to the end and they're like, magical, and like they keep getting more and more specific, and I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, cola, and I'm like, you're just adding in words now. It's like, no wonder your history is filled with nothing but advertisements.
And they're just typing it with 2 index fingers on the keyboard. Yeah.
Like, I type with 2 index fingers, but these bad boys move quick. The Bestial Wrath
Here we have it.
on the Scale Hide.
Yeah, Bunnyhoppor here clearly showing, again, I think as was still a debatable pick, but I think it's working out very well for him in this instance, in that it just is a way to spend his mana. He still has the Master's Call. He has the Unleash the Beast now as well, which is just 12 mana he has to spend over the next couple of turns. He just wants to dump his hand. Eventually, he's going to find Zul'jin or a tracking or something else to that will refill his hand.
It makes a lot of sense. You know, we talk a lot about value, but one of the biggest values you get in Hearthstone is tempo. You know, it was funny because about almost a year ago now, I ran into StrifeCrow at an airport, and we were headed to an event, and he had just kind of started getting back into playing Hearthstone a ton again. You know, he's super dominant early on. He's one of the Grandmasters now for Americas, and he had just kind of taken a step back from the game, focused on his personal life, and you know, just do his own thing. And he really opened up my eyes to the idea of Hearthstone and why it's so different from so many card games that we've played over the past. StrifeCrow has played, you know, quite a bit of cards over his time as well. And he was like, in Hearthstone, you don't have like control and combo and aggro. You have tempo, tempo, and tempo. And you have early game tempo, you have mid game tempo, and you have late game tempo. And that's all your decks are trying to take advantage of.
Speaking of mid-game tempo, you could just see from Bunnyhoppor's reaction there. I mean, as you were just saying, the fact that Bunnyhoppor will now be able to seize board control pretty much every turn whilst keeping his health at 30 consistently here. Bozzzton has no chance of going for a burn lethal plan, and looking at his hand, that's exactly what it wants to do. This is not a hand that gains value. This is a hand that kills your opponent. And him wincing there with the second game of Vicious Scalehide Dire Frenzy just perfectly illuminates that he's in a miserable spot again.
Right. And so if you think about StrifeCrow talking to me about how the game is all tempo and your deck is trying to do one of those facets, imagine when you're playing against a deck that so far has done all 3 of those facets.
Yeah.
It's taken advantage of early game, mid game, and late game tempo.
And still, Bozzzton cannot play 3 cards in a turn lest he summon a 6/6
Yeah,
Wrath.
this is not supposed to happen. And just every single turn, Bunnyhoppor gets to fight back.
I mean, look at how good this gets now. Just, I mean, Unleash the Beast Vicious Scalehide on this turn, right? Like,
I don't even know if he needs to do that.
what else does he spend his mana on then?
Well, last game he started
Shimmerfly?
last game he started weaving hero powers at some point.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I think with 2 copies of Timberwolf, hero powers definitely have
like that.
a stark markedness on the game where the lower your opponent's life total is, the more deadly an Unleash the Hounds becomes. And I think for Bunnyhoppor, it's about just continuing to restrict the board position from Bozzzton, so that he has to play 3 cards in a turn, and then the moment he does that, Bunnyhopper's going to move in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like the Shimmer Fly.
I don't know. I'm wondering if I prefer your play. Like, I suppose Bunnyhoppor is in the instance now where the game is not over.
Okay, hang on.
Speaking of the game not being over.
That's a big turn.
Well, how do you sequence this with Evil Miscreant? Oh man, that rat trap here is miserable. Unless we were to see... Because he wants to go zap, eviscerate on the rat trap, but he can't activate it very well without playing the zap first.
Yeah, and the thing for Bozzzton is he's thinking about just setting the Shark, but there is Deadly Shot in Bunnyhoppor's deck. So that is something he needs to consider, is if I set Shark and I get Deadly Shot, do I get hurt too badly? And so I think you need to take the payoff from Miscreant now.
So I guess he can play the Miscreant and then just swing with the weapon, because if he bounces the Shark, he gets a 2-mana Shark to play with all these lackeys next turn. And if he bounces the lackey, then he could replay the lackey, obviously.
Yeah, you can also kill the rat trap this way. It hurts.
It really does hurt. Okay, this was a smart way to do it because he only needs the 2 damage and doesn't want to bounce back the Kobold Lackey. Bozzzton is still in this game. He's got some pretty powerful turns coming up, especially if he can find some good cards off of the Ethereal Lackey. But Bunnyhoppor, if he can smell where this game is going, can really just start turning up the heat now.
I wonder.
I think that turn was scary enough from Bozzzton to the point where you just want to start playing out your cards super aggressively.
Okay, this is a 1/3.
Oh, it was a 1/3 scale hide, sorry. Okay, that makes more sense as to why you wouldn't play it there. And I think this is lovely from Bunnyhoppor. He knows where this game's going. He wants to close it out quicker. And also with Zul'jin in hand, he wants to dump hand space.
All right, major turn for Bozzzton here.
Vendetta is 0 mana, so I like that.
Yeah, I like 0 mana blow up things.
Cheap shot is interesting, but I think it's just too much mana to expend on this turn when you have Shark in play.
Well, he's thinking about it.
What? What? Violet Haze.
Okay, now you done lost your mind.
What?
I know for a fact that Violet Haze is not the pick in that spot. Although it could be. I don't know exactly. What?
He's going for value.
Wait a minute. Violet Haze does not say Death Rattle Minion. I believe it says Death Rattles.
Really? I thought it said Death Rattle Minions.
Yeah, add 2 Death Rattle cards to your hand. So that
what's
could
he
get
looking
Waggle's
for?
pick. What are the
Vendetta is 0 mana, deal 4 damage. This is 3 mana, add 2 probably bad cards to your hand.
I'll give you that.
I would never have picked Violet Haze there in a million years.
I definitely would not have picked Violet Haze either.
But I mean, I guess he's just thinking, I need the value. My hand doesn't get there. And if you want to talk value, that's value, my dude.
They're pretty good cards.
Those are 2 good cards.
I think, all things considered, that was a pretty smart play. He just needed I mean, his hand's got plenty of spells. It doesn't have any stuff.
Maybe Violet Haze was just...
The more I think about it, the more I think it was.
The more I think about it, the more I like it. That doesn't necessarily mean I think it was the right card to go for there.
You're out of minions after that wave. I think it's the right call. I really do.
I mean, I guess his game plan was you pick Violet Haze and pray that Zul'jin is the bottom card in Bunnyhoppor's deck. It obviously was not the case. Bunnyhoppor can absolutely pop off here.
Yeah. Oh. Oh. So it's looking rough. Oh. It's looking way rough.
The Bestial Wrath.
Was he thinking about Zul'jin? when he took Bestial Wrath, like that he gets to protect his thing for the turn? No.
Actually, I mean, it's Bunnyhoppor, right? Like, he thinks about everything. Look at that brain. That big brain he's got in his head.
Well, he's leaning forward, too.
That does make it look bigger, I'll grant you that.
Perspective. For instance, when you lean back, it looks the same size.
Small.
So
far
many
away.
options.
Also, his doctorate also makes him seem somewhat cleverer, I would say.
And he's dressed up. And he won game 1 somehow.
What a guy. And with now the Zul'jin, actually, one of the less important but definitely valid concerns here for Bozzzton is there's another rat trap in play.
Played. I guess.
Yep.
That's just it.
Just doesn't have a way to fight back. Wow.
A 2-0 victory with Hunter against Rogue. What is considered the one bad matchup by a lot of Hunter players for this mid-range Beast Hunter deck. And Bunnyhoppor just, I mean, first game it was close. Second game, he just steamrolled Bozzzton.
I genuinely don't know how game 1 got away from Bozzzton. I'd have to go back and like sit down and like actively look through what was happening to figure out what went wrong. In game number 2, I think it's quite obvious what went wrong for Bozzzton. There was an early rat trap. He got a useless card off of a Blink Fox. He drew Leroy early and never really had a way to compound the issue of what was happening. Yeah. And Bunnyhoppor again had Vicious Scalehide. Yeah. And the threats of Dire Frenzies throughout the course of that game. And I think very cleverly secured tempo in that game. But in that game number 2, I feel like Bozzzton just didn't have the right kind of hand to fight with. And I don't know if that's a product of deck building or just a product of the draw. But when I look at it overall, I think game 2, he just kind of had a bad hand. He had some good stuff going, but nothing really to mix it together.
I think, to be fair to him, even though his hand was saying pretty much one thing in go face as much as you can with the Leroy, the double eviscerate and all that stuff, I think he made as good of a switch of game plan as he could with the Violet Haze. I can definitely understand that play given how the game shook out, because if Zul'jin had been the bottom card in his deck, maybe he can seize back board control by going big death rattle minion, prep, eviscerate, swing the board back in his favor, and chip down Bunnyhoppor's health total over the course of the game. Yeah. Maybe he could have wrestled things back. But
I definitely don't think that the burn plan was going to get there.
That was not going to work, right, which is why it was a good pivot.
Which is why I like the Violet Haze there. We got Bunnyhoppor ready for an interview. Bunny, can you hear us?
Yep.
Looking dapper today, my friend.
Ja, Bruder muss los, ne? Yeah, I gotta go soon.
How soon? How long do I have? I'm going to time it.
Or like 2 minutes.
2 minutes. 1 minute and 20 seconds. Or 1 minute and 20 seconds. Let's go. Okay, so talk to me about the tertiary deck, how it functions, and in game number 1, how on earth did you actually win?
I mean, Hyena's pretty bad because it backs up or SI it, so you take that out. You play red traps, so you limit their card draw, which is more effective against like the Waggle pick versions, because I like to play the Dread Corsair for 0, but against other rogues is still like totally fine, especially against the Sharks. And you can either win by just like the Scalehide plan or limiting their options with the red trap and overwhelming board, or you can just bow and play like 1/1/1, so like 1 attack minions like Shimmerfly and go face. So that's the plan of the deck. And then what was the question for the first? How did I win game 1?
Yeah, how did you win game 1? I don't. What happened? Like honestly, Derek and I stopped paying as much attention because he had so much stuff going on. We just assumed you were going to lose.
I mean, I ran out of cards, but my hero power still kind of works against Rogue.
How did Bozzzton run out of cards? That's like where at that point in that game did you go, oh, I'm ahead?
I mean, I Dire Frenzy to Scalehide. So then the rest of your deck that you can draw is just like whenever you draw Scalehide Beast, they're just a nut. So I mean, 2 mana 4/6 with Rush. You don't have to argue about tempo at that point. You just have to like kind of draw decently.
So I'll follow up that question. If you had Vicious Scalehide and Dire Frenzy, would you keep those 2 cards in your opening hand against Rogue?
Not on play. Sometimes on coin, because sometimes you can just play the Scalehide on 2 and then coin Dire Frenzy.
I just want to know, because we've been saying that Rogue is pretty good against Hunter. Is Hunter actually bad against Rogue, or do other Hunter players just have to get on your level?
Hunter is actually bad against Rogue, but it's not like horrible. I think the games went fine, but I think on average, Broke is like is a pretty bad matchup. You can cheese out a bunch of wins, especially when you attack with red traps and you take out hyenas.
And Bunnyhoppor, final question for you. What's your favorite wedding song?
I don't know.
He's like, I don't have time for this. Stop asking me ridiculous questions. Bunnyhoppor, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations, and we'll see you later.
I'm partial to Pachelbel's Cannon myself.
I don't know what that is.
The song they play at weddings.
His reaction to... I don't know. I'm done. I'm leaving. This has been Grandmasters. Thanks, Mike, for that question.
It's all right there, buddy.
Man, he played pretty darn well. I'm kind of surprised he said he wouldn't keep the Scale Hide in Dire Frenzy.
It makes sense. I think it's a stronger later game play, but it just shows Bunnyhoppor's deep understanding of that deck and that matchup.
Indeed. Takes it 2-0 over Bozzzton, which now improves Bunnyhoppor's score to a 4-2 record. That's our first match in the books, which means that we got 4 more coming up. Viper versus Silvername is going to be our next match, so stay tuned. We got more Grandmasters for the European region coming up.